Good morning, Year 4. I hope you're all okay. I have some retrieval questions to start with today about what you have read yesterday. So can you remember the following 5 questions, please? Pause the video and have a think about these questions. Off you go. Okay, so question number 1. Do you remember what Lila suggested they did with the liana vines to soften them? That's right, she soaked them in water to make sure they were nice and soft so she could mould them to make the raft. Lovely. What were the purple berries called that Con found? Oh, this one was tricky. They were called acai berries. Now, they were the berries that you could eat. They were like dry berries that you could eat, weren't they? Why did Fred want to take a photograph of the raft? Do you remember? That's right. It was all about his father, wasn't it? He wished he could take a photograph to show his father the hard work that he'd made. He'd made this raft all on his own, so he wanted to showcase the hard work that he'd done. Did Fred go into the water with the raft? No, he didn't, did he? And what did he do instead? That's right, he left the raft just by the water and then he went back into the clearing to see the other people. Now today we are going to read on and find out whether or not they went in the water with the raft, and we are going to finish off the chapter and, start a new chapter today and find out what happened in the water. Now today the focus that we will be looking at is making predictions based on what we have read. So by the end of this session, you will have been able to look for the keywords or phrases in a text. You will then be able to predict what might happen from details which are stated and implied in the text. And you will also be able to support your predictions using evidence from the text. Now we have got some vocabulary teaching as usual. So the first word is this word stagnant. This word stagnant is a 2-syllable word and it's an adjective. An adjective meaning that it's describing something. So in the book it's stated as soon as Con had spat decorously into the stagnant pool. So this word stagnant means a body of water that has no current or flow, and often it has an unpleasant smell. So you can see here that this is a stagnant pool of water. It's still, there is no current making the water move like there would be in a river, and also it's quite brown and dirty, having an unpleasant smell. Another way you could use this word is by saying a stagnant ditch. If there's a ditch in where you are stood, and it might be a stagnant ditch because it might be a ditch of water which is not moving and it might smell quite unpleasant. Some synonyms, words that mean the same or similar to stagnant, are motionless, still, or immobile. So this idea that the stagnant pool of water, it's not moving, there's no flow of water. Whereas some antonyms, some words that mean an opposite of stagnant, are flowing, running, or fresh. So water that is flowing, it's running maybe down a stream, and it's fresh, it's not having an unpleasant smell. And the second word we're going to look at today is ominously. And this is an adverb, it modifies the verb describing how something is, and it's 4 syllables, so ominously. And this word ominously means in a way that suggests that something bad is going to happen. So we could say the black sky is looming ominously over him. So something bad is going to happen. And this is what the image is showing. So you've got your road here and you've got a black cloud in the sky. Now, normally when we see a black cloud in the sky, what might that mean? That's right, it might mean that a storm is coming. So something bad is going to happen. And in the book, it's quoted as, "It works," said Max. "For now," said Con ominously. So maybe she's feeling doubtful about this raft working and thinking that something bad is going to happen. Some synonyms for the word ominously: threatening or alarming. All of these negative words that suggest that ominously doesn't mean it's going to be a good thing because it means that something bad is going to happen. And finally, some antonyms, words that mean the opposite of ominously. Although this isn't a direct opposite word, it's a near antonym. So the word promising. So if something is promising, it's looking hopeful, it's looking positive. But ominously is something bad going to happen, okay? We are going to start a new chapter today called Maiden Voyage. So we will see what's going to happen here. The last we know is that Fred had made the raft. It is ready to go in the river, but they had not gone in the river yet. So let's read and find out what's going to happen. Lila was waiting outside the den. Her arms were wrapped around her knees and she was glaring at him furiously, so she was quite angry. "You! I thought you were dead!" "I was down by the river." "Scratch a message in the dirt next time." Why do you think she wanted to scratch a message in the dirt? That's right. So he would tell her where he was. "Yes, of course. Sorry." But Fred could barely concentrate on what she was saying. "The raft is ready. Will you come and try it out?" "Max has to brush his teeth first. His breath is disgusting. It's scaring the dragonflies." Because obviously they hadn't been able to brush their teeth in a while, haven't got toothbrush. What could they use? Well, Lila picked 4 twigs and shredded the tops with her fingernails until they looked like paintbrushes. So imagine what a paintbrush looked like. They made these toothbrushes out of twigs. So they weren't as hygienic as a toothbrush was. "Here," Lila handed one to Fred. "If our teeth drop out, it will just make everything worse." It did feel better, Fred had to admit, to sweep some of the fuzz from his teeth, but he was bursting with impatience. He gave 3 scrubs and dropped the brush. "Come on," he said, as soon as Con had spat decorously into the stagnant pool. Fred led them at a rundown to the river. They stood, panting, while he showed them where the loops he had been made double thick, and how he had added extra branches all the way around the outside. So he's trying to convince them that the raft is very, very safe. So I wonder if they'll try and go in the river now. "What do you want us to do?" said Con. "Clap?" Fred did, secretly, just a little. But he grinned. "No, I want you to get on it." He edged the raft onto the bank. It slid down the mud, landed on the water with a splash, tipped up on its right side. Fred drew in his breath and righted itself. It swayed on the water, steady as a battleship. It was more beautiful, Fred thought, than a millionaire's yacht. He kept a firm hold of the liana tied to the right-hand corner. "It floats," said Max. "Course it floats," said Con. "It's wood." Fred waded into the water, crossed his fingers and hauled himself up. The raft dipped and spun under his weight as he climbed on, then steadied, rocking on the current. He paddled it closer to the bank. "Climb on," he said. "Max, wait," said Lila. Before anyone could stop him, Max had tipped himself headfirst down the bank into the river. He came up, spitting mud. "Pull me up," he said. Fred hefted him by his armpits. Con and Lila followed more slowly, studying the water for piranha. They wanted to make sure there were no piranha in the water this time. Fred offered a hand to each. Lila took it. Con did not. The raft shook as they arranged themselves, but soon they were sitting, crouched on the wood and vines, bobbing high on the water. "It works," said Max. "For now," Con said ominously. She was very doubtful. Something must go wrong, she thought. "Let's go down river," said Fred. "Why?" demanded Con. "We know it floats with us on it. That's what you wanted." "We needn't go far, just to test it." Here, under the cover of the trees, the current was slow, but out in the middle of the river it spat and bubbled with speed. Fred could feel his skin twitching to send the raft down those waters. "Let's try," said Lila. Her knuckles were pale where she was gripping the edges of the raft, but her eyes were hungry with curiosity. "If we're going to sail it to Manaus, we need to test it first." Fred seized the pole he had made. He smoothed its bark with the edge of a flint, and it was twice as tall as he was. The raft bucked under them. Fred felt his heart buck in unison. "Careful," said Con. The skin around her nose and lips was greyish-green. "Don't go too fast. We need to be able to get back." But the current caught at the raft and spun them, dragging at the wood and pushing it fast downriver. They sank a little in the water, but remained upright. They were still safe, but now they're going down the river to see what happens. Fred ducked as an overhanging branch threatened to hit him in the eye. So they were going that fast down the riverbank that there were branches coming from trees, so they had to duck to make sure they didn't catch them. "Is that a caiman?" asked Con, pointing at the far shore, so that caiman being the alligator. Max's eyes widened. "Make it go away!" "No, of course not. It's just a log," said Lila, taking her brother's wrist in her hand. But over his head she met Con's eyes and whispered, "Maybe." Fred steered closer to the bank, his heart thumping. They sped down the corridor of green. Fred tried to hold their course with the pole. Trees dipped into the water on either side of them, like curtains at the theatre. Fred thought, with the river as a stage. Two bright birds with yellow bellies flapped overhead. "Blue macaws," said Lila. "I tried so hard to persuade Mama to let me have one of these as a pet, but she said Max was loud enough on his own, without a parrot." "It's funny," said Con. "I never really thought much about birds before. The birds here make the birds in England look like they're dressed for a job interview." The sun beat down on the river, sending up green and silver light in their eyes. Fred followed the current downstream. They came to a fork in the river. So which means that there's a fork in the river is where there's 2 or 3 different pathways that they could go. "Someone will have to remember which way we've come," he said, "or we'll get lost." There was a pause. Then Con said, "I'll remember, if you like." Fred looked round, surprised. Con hadn't struck him as the volunteering sort. I've got a good photographic memory, actually," she said. And that is all we're going to read today. So today we are going back to thinking about prediction, and we know that we can use predicting Pip to help us. And we know from our last predicting session last week that predicting Pip helps us to work out what will happen next by looking at the clues in the text. Because she helps us to make predictions about what will happen after a given point. And when we make predictions year 4, it's not like when we retrieve information, because when we retrieve information, the answer is always there. But when we make predictions, we have to use what we know and what we are given to help us make predictions about what we think might happen next. So it's a bit trickier, but I think we'll all still be able to do it, okay? And also predicting Pip helps you to look at the clues in the text to support your predictions of what will happen next. Now we've seen that there are 3 different types of predicting Pip questions. There is this first one here where it's a large question where it gives you a statement and it asks you to tick yes, no or maybe. Then it asks you to explain your choice fully using evidence, and there's lots of space here and 3 marks to grab, so you must make sure you explain in detail. The next is asking you to look at something based on what you've read and what does the last paragraph suggest, again using evidence to support your prediction. And the number 14 gives you a statement and it gives you a multiple choice answer, asking you to tick 1. Now today we are again going to look at the give your opinion question, which is this one here. Now this type of question will ask you to give your opinion on a character or an event based on what's happened in the text so far. So it will never ask you something that you don't know the answer to, because you will have read what it's asking you about. So you will have to use what you know about the text to make that prediction about what you think will happen. Now, these are the questions that we looked at last week, but we're going to practice them again this week because we need to make sure that we use the space that we're given to produce a long answer. Our answer also needs to be giving evidence that we have found in the text to support our answer. And because it's worth 3 marks, I'm going to show you today how we can lay out our answer to make sure that we get the full 3 marks. So, in part 2 of this video, I will be explaining my example and showing you the steps to how you will be writing your own answer to your prediction question.